The Bucks started this series against Los Angeles well, and it progressively worsened from there. A couple questionable coaching decisions, and the offense being more standardized has kind of changed some things for the Pirates. Let's talk about that and more on the next Locked On Pirates.
You are Locked On Pirates, your daily Pittsburgh Pirates podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Did you know your Fire TV is also an Xbox? Turn any TV into your gaming and entertainment hub with Fire TV Stick 4K devices. No console required. Head to Amazon.com/Fire TV Locked On to get started. Xbox Game Pass Ultimate subscription and compatible controller required. Welcome to Locked On Pirates. I'm Gary, and yeah, this series just kind of progressively got away from the Bucks. The Dodgers couldn't touch Paul Skeens. Keller largely kept them in check. And then the Dodgers just broke through in Game 2 and flattened them in Game 3. And Andy Pages doesn't count in any of that because he went 10 for 12 in this series. I'm not sure I've ever seen anything like that, ever. That was crazy. He was locked in. And I thought O'Neill Cruz was locked in, but my goodness, Aunt Andy Pages. So listen, a 3-3 road trip here is better than I hoped for, but because they actually played all these games close, except for that last one, it's a little disappointing. They really could have won another game or even two. A couple things we have to discuss. First, Shelton using a consistent lineup. Then we'll talk about Colin Holderman, and I mean all of it, all the way back to last year. And we'll wrap up talking a bit about some silly ideas that I've been seeing on social media, and I just want to rapid fire address just for some fun. I think the last segment is probably something I've been looking forward to all weekend. So we asked for it. We got it. Consistent lineups. In fact, it only changed when they faced a lefty. And even then, it changed minimally. And it changed slightly for Davis, who's kind of become Skeen's personal catcher here since Endy went on the IL. What do we think now that we've gotten what we asked for? And Kutch has gotten what he asked for that matter. Kutch was asked about it after the game. He had nothing but praise for it, especially focused a lot on that top four of he and Valdez and Bart and Reynolds and Cruz. So I guess 5 is where he got to. But that group in particular, they're playing pretty good. They really are. Don't worry. You can say you like it. I promise I won't tell others that you like Shelton or something. Don't worry. Separate him from the process. Is it working for you? Would you do it any differently? I might, but I have a kind of hard time putting my finger on where I would. It is, in my mind, helping the top 4 or 5. It's hard to deny their hitting. Thing is, it also means guys like Davis, Gorski, Canario, and even Triolo, for that matter, if you happen to be somebody that cares about him getting some opportunities, they're just sitting. Before you complain too much, here's some numbers I just want you to think about. Tommy Pham in the last 7 games. That's about 28 at bats. That's a pretty good volume. 286. You know, he's getting on base at a 310 clip. He's slugging 357. Adam Frazier in the last 7 games. 21 at bats. Now, the reason he's only got 21 at bats is partially because he's got 5 walks. But he's hitting 381. He's carrying an 11-game hitting streak right now. His on-base percentage is .500. He's slugging .429. I'm talking in the last 7 games. Bart, 26 at-bats. 5 walks himself. A 269 average with a 387 on-base percentage and a 308 slug. How about Kutch? Kutch is a guy that definitely doesn't usually play this many games in a row, does he? 29 at-bats. 2 home runs, 3 walks, a 345 average, a 406 on base percentage, and a 621 slug. I list those 4 in particular because they're the ones that would sit for any of the 4 guys we mentioned sitting on the bench. So before you start doing any of that, woe is me, this guy's not getting opportunity, before we do that whole routine and song and dance, I thought maybe let's take a look at who they would be sitting for, because no matter what you thought of Adam Frazier and Tommy Pham being signed, and you all know I'm not a big fan of the signings. You all know I think they should have done better. That said, they're here, and I just read you those numbers. Those aren't numbers that you bench. I mean, no matter how little faith you have that they'll keep hitting that way, you can't beg for consistent lineups. Get them. Get these kind of results, and then complain that other guys are sitting. Okay? I mean, this is kind of what we've been hoping they would do for quite some time. We've been begging for it to happen. Kutch finally said something, and lo and behold, it's happening. That said, these numbers, they're making his decisions really easy, aren't they? I was prepared to give Shelton a lot of credit for doing it, but when you really look at those numbers, how could he not? I mean, really, how could he not? I know we make a lot of jokes about this guy hit a home run, so he's going to sit tomorrow. But realistically, look at that lineup, that bottom that I just talked about. I didn't even mention IKF in all of that. He's been hitting too. I will say the better contact is great. This lineup desperately does need more power, though. And there, if you want to make an argument, you might have your strongest argument, because you are sitting Gorski, Canario, and Davis, who are all guys who they could probably produce a little bit more power, even if they hit less. So it might be like a counterbalance where you give up the average and maybe a little bit of on base, but you kind of recoup it with some power. In other words, there's a little more oomph there to kind of drive some runs in. It's so tough because, even in all those names I mentioned, I told you I didn't talk about IKF. Well, I didn't talk about Hayes either. Your third baseman is a singles guy, so it's not like you've got a big bopper there on the corner either. From an overall construction standpoint, the roster is not built with enough power. That being said, they do, at least right now, have this performing set of average and on base percentage type hitters. They're doing the job right now. So you got to play them right now. And it isn't about being right. And it isn't about doing right by a rookie. It's about doing right by this baseball team. This was a tough series against the Dodgers, but we all knew it was going to be. If this lineup is hitting the way they have been really this entire road trip, they will score some runs, especially against teams that don't pitch like the Dodgers. I think we saw that a little bit against the Angels, and they sputtered, but they were getting guys on base. They were creating havoc. They were creating at least action on the base paths most innings. I think they're an annoying team to play if they're hitting like this, and a team that's probably going to score their fair share of runs against decent teams. Real good teams, though, it's real hard to beat them without the long ball. At some point, that's going to have to come. It's funny I'm saying that on a day where they had 2 home runs in the first inning, but you saw it's not enough, because it's not enough to keep up with those other teams that can do that just about every game. The Pirates can't right now. You start trailing by 6-7 runs, this is not a team that's going to roar back and take that. I want to take a quick break, and then I want to come back and I want to talk about Colin Holderman. He was a lightning rod for this series. He had a little bounce back on Sunday. I want to talk about the entire picture with the player. Why are we trying this? Why are they working with him? Why did they do this? Let's just discuss it. The NBA playoffs are almost here, and FanDuel is giving new customers an incredible way to get in on the action. Right now, when you join FanDuel and place your first $5 bet, you'll get $250 in bonus bets if your bet wins. From three-pointers to steals to assists, FanDuel has so many ways to bet your favorite player props. Don't miss out. Head to FanDuel.com and claim your $250 in bonus bets today. All right, so Colin Holderman was called up on Saturday for Mike Burrows. And welcome back to Locked On, I should say. Make sure you subscribe, hit the like button, give me some comments, especially about this series over the weekend. I thought it was a fascinating series. I really did. He was called up for Burrows, and Burrows himself was just called up and not used. It was a weird situation. I'm not really sure what they were thinking. All I know is Colin Holderman had one more go at AAA. It didn't go all that great. He comes up here. I wasn't 100% sure why they made the move when they did, but they did. Derek Shelton decides to stick him in the 8th inning of a tie ball game, 4-4 in Los Angeles. A leverage situation for a guy who has struggled for over a year now, really. Well, about a year. If you date it back to the All-Star game last year, we'll get into numbers later. But if you date it back to the All-Star game, that's probably when he really started struggling the most. He's been trouble, at least with command, ever since then. So I haven't liked his game in a minute. I don't understand the need to try to force him into a situation. But it didn't go well, obviously. And then Sunday he comes out and, well, he does better. And you see a little bit more of what there is to like about Colin Holderman. Last year's numbers, 2024. A 3.16 ERA in 55 games. And that was about 51 and a third innings pitched. 56 strikeouts in that time, 131 whip, everything completely acceptable. Early on here, his numbers are terrible. I'm not going to lie. I'm not going to tell you they're good. And I'm not going to read them to you either because they're kind of useless. It's only been 7 games and 6 innings. His numbers are bloated. He's gotten hit. You know that. Last year, he got sick in spring training. Lost a ton of weight. Started late. And then once he got to Pittsburgh, they rode him like a rented mule. And they just absolutely threw him into every situation, multiple innings here and there, back-to-back days, 3 days in a row a couple times. Nobody threw more than Colin Holderman before the All-Star break. He got real consideration for the All-Star game last year. He was that good. And I mean, really. And then it all fell apart. The control went, the velocity went, the confidence went, and it simply hasn't come back. Maybe it won't. Saturday, like I said, terrible outing. Loaded the bases, then got pulled, and all 3 scored on the grand slam, obviously. Sunday, 1 1/3 scoreless and hitless, including getting out of a bases loaded jam that he was brought in to play fireman for. The exact opposite of logic because of what had just happened the night before. In this game, the only benefit really was that Kyle Nicholas had already screwed the pooch in this game. So it really was not a very high leverage situation. But either way, he got the job done today. And you see what there is to like. The stuff is really good. And when he's crisply in command of it, he's a deadly pitcher. He's got an arsenal that is to be envied. He's got stuff that few can generate. He's got spin that most can't replicate. He's got velocity too, and he's got the frame to make it easy to do. He just hasn't had that consistent success since the midpoint of last year. It's early to say Bednar's been fixed, but whatever they did with Bednar, they really needed to kind of do with Colin Holderman. Like, get him back in the lab a little bit. Figure out what's going on with him. See if you can't fix it. Take away a couple of the pitches if he thinks he has too many. Focus on the ones that actually get outs. Maybe he's a guy ultimately that just shouldn't be facing left-handed pitching. That's a problem, don't get me wrong. But if you can at least take that under advisement and minimize how many times he does, or make sure that it's not one of the big boppers if he has to do it, maybe you can make something of him. But man, I don't want to be making something of the back end guys. I want them to be dominant. If you're bringing somebody in the 7th, 8th, 9th inning, I'm not a believer that you should care which side of the plate they're hitting from, because your stuff should be good enough that you can get outs one way or another. You can favor one side. You can prefer having that pitcher face a right-hander. That's only natural. But it shouldn't be like a prerequisite. So if that is the case, here's hoping they don't go that way. The Pirates have options here. They don't have to do this. We talked last week about how it was time to end the Carmen Mlodzinski experiment with the starting. Well, there's a perfect solution for what you're trying to get out of Colin Holderman. That doesn't mean that you couldn't use both of them. It would be great if he and Nicholas and Mlodzinski were all throwing fire down there, and Bednar's closing out games, and you got all those lefties doing good stuff too, and that'd be wonderful. But it doesn't have to be that way. So I guess my question is, why are we forcing it in? Why are we forcing it into games right now when really the bullpen has been doing well? I feel like we're making changes to a bullpen that's doing well for the sake of making changes, because Colin was healthy, because Bednar had a couple good outings. And again, I'm okay with Bednar coming back. I'm glad it's working out. I'm just saying the bullpen was not an issue. There's no expiration date on options and whatnot. Now, if you really think David Bednar is one of the best, okay, make your move. I get it. I'm not going to sit here and argue that Colin Holderman pitching the best he can isn't better than Chase Shugart pitching the best he can. It is. Just find a way to get it out of him a lot more. Maybe in AAA before I see it back up here shoved right back into the same situation. I can excuse you wanting to see. I can excuse you wanting to try and play all those games. I get that. He's a talented pitcher when you've got a ton of control over him. It's a nice asset to have. You want this to work out. But you can't force baseball players to work out. They either do or they don't. I'm a little confused about the timing of the call-up. I'm a little confused about why they would go with Burrows in the first place if they were planning on doing this just a day later. I guess there was a real injury concern, but they had other options. Again, they could have called upon that would have been a little bit easier to make happen. We'll see what they do. We'll see how it works out. The bullpen has lost some of the consistency I felt like they were building up, even as the lineup is now starting to build some. And isn't it weird that it feels like Derek Shelton always has to have something to tinker with? There always has to be something that he's toying with, right? That said, he's not calling players up. Ben Cherington is. They're making those player moves. I don't even understand how they could make a claim that the bullpen is tired or taxed, really. They haven't been forced to pitch an awful lot, really, except for when they consciously decided to start a reliever that's having some shorter outings. They're getting most of the length from people. Bailey Falter has let them down here a little bit. But That shouldn't tax your bullpen for a week. You've had an off day every week. I mean, like, there's plenty of time for them to rest. You've gotten great pitching performances, relatively stress-free innings on the way out. I don't think they needed to make all these changes for freshness. So that leaves me with ego. And if you're making baseball decisions for ego or to prove yourself right, you're often going to screw up. When we come back, it's time for my favorite segment of the day, silly things I've heard on the internet, and then we're going to banter about them because that's a lot of fun for me. There's nothing better. There's nothing better than catching an MLB game live, the crack of the bat, the roar of the crowd, and the smell of the ballpark food. And if you're looking to go last minute, Gametime makes getting tickets easier than ever. With last minute deals, all in pricing, and a lowest price guarantee, Gametime takes the stress out of buying MLB tickets. Plus, ticket prices drop as Gametime gets closer, meaning you can score an incredible deal. Gametime is the official ticketing partner of Locked On, and as the Pirates regular season is coming up, I can count on them to help grab tickets that meet my needs. In fact, my favorite time to use it is when I'm traveling. I just used it last year when I went to a San Francisco Giants game in San Francisco. It was a last minute idea, and lo and behold, I got some nice, really affordable tickets and a great seat at a ballpark I wasn't all that familiar with before. So really, really good service. Take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Gametime. Download the Gametime app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONMLB for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account, redeem code LOCKEDONMLB for $20 off. Download Gametime today. Last minute tickets, lowest price, guaranteed. All right, welcome back to Locked On Pirates. Hey, before I get into my last segment here, let's just welcome all of the new Steelers draft picks to the Steelers. I don't know as much about them as, say, Chris Carter over at Locked On Steelers. Go listen to him and hear all of his thoughts about the Steelers draft board. But all accounts, sounds like they picked some decent players here. It should be fun. Go Steelers. We love all the black and gold here at Locked On Pirates. So silly things I've heard. I just want to go ahead and combat them a little bit here because I just think they require more than a snarky tweet reply. So let's do them. Silly idea number 1. Trade Skeens now to fill the roster. Couple reasons why this one's silly. And it's not, I don't think it's going to be the reason you think. Not just, no, I don't want to lose him. Because, no, I don't want to lose him. The Pirates have team control of him through the end of the decade. To trade him right now, there's absolutely zero chance you would get the kind of asset return that you hope you would. Mostly because nobody has it. I mean, nobody does. You'd probably have to look back to something like Mookie Betts trade, not Juan Soto, because he was getting towards the end of team control. Mookie Betts still had a little bit when he was traded, and he brought back major league players in exchange. Not great ones though, and some good prospects, but not as many as you'd think. Plus, I think one of the main complaints about this team is that they don't develop well. So I'm not sure I want to bring back a bunch of projects for one of the very few guys they've drafted who just comes up and plays right away. Not to mention, man, you're right back to like Keller's your ace. Listen, you saw Keller pitch on Saturday. You saw Paul Skeens pitch on Friday. Which one of them is going to win you a playoff series? Both, you hope. One, you know. I think that I'm holding off on that idea first for a couple reasons. One, I can't get a proper return. I can't. There just won't be one. Not without taking on salary, which if they were going to do that, they should try to extend Paul Skeens. And B, I don't think that it would fill the roster immediately like you think. I think you'd get prospects, good prospects. You might be really good in 3 years, but I don't think you'd be really good in 2025 or 2026 because of it. And I think you'd always be looking for that lockdown ace. Even if Bubba Chandler turns into one, you'd wish you had 2. Even if Jared Jones turns back into one, you'd wish you had 3. I just think that they've built it through pitching, and they can finish this job through pitching. I don't think they have to do anything that rash or consider anything that rash right this second. If anything, if I was going to trade a pitcher, it would probably be Mitch Keller. And it would be after I feel like I have a couple more of these guys established enough that I feel good about it. That would give me a little bit more room to maneuver financially too. Let's see. Silly idea number 2, trade Heaney right now for a bat. Well, Heaney isn't going to return the kind of bat you hope he's going to return, for one thing. Heaney is pitching out of his mind right now. But Heaney has a long track record in this league. The league ain't going to be fooled by 5 starts, folks. The league is never fooled by 5 starts. Just like they're never fooled by someone hitting like 8 home runs in a week. That doesn't mean you're Mickey Mantle. That means you had a really good week. You know, you do it next week, we'll talk. You do it that month, we'll talk. It's not like that. Andrew Heaney's a good pitcher, but for the most part, everybody knows what he is. He's around a 4 ERA guy. He'll handle a nice volume of innings for you. He's got playoff experience. He can handle the bullpen. He's a valuable chip. You can get a good piece for him probably at the deadline if you want to move him. Ideally, though, your team would need and want him. If your team's going well and he's performing, you'd want him. He's not going to return somebody you shove in the 4 or 5 hole. Well, he might return somebody Derek Shelton will shove in the 4 or 5 hole. Not necessarily you. I don't think you're going to get the kind of middle of the order talent you're hoping. I would say like if you want it to return like say like a starting shortstop. Well, what team is in the playoff hunt looking to add a pitcher of Heaney's capability? Has a starting shortstop they're going to give you? The Orioles? I don't think so. I don't think so. I don't think they're giving you that. I think there's a little bit of an overestimation of what he'll return, for one thing. And that's really the long and short of it. Plus, if teams this early in a season are trying to swing trades, they're not trying to swing a fringe trade like that. And that is what it would be, a fringe trade. That would be him for a really nice lottery ticket, and I mean like somebody in single A who's got some great numbers that was drafted last year. Somebody your team probably wanted to draft last year. Somebody that you were already interested in, you're using him to target so that you can go pick him up. Not unlike what the Pirates did with Johnny Severino, who they missed out on in the international poll, and they ended up getting him. And he's performing, so hey, they have an eye for it maybe a little bit. I think you're going to have to wait closer to the deadline for something like that. And for this starting rotation to kind of prove itself out a little bit more. There's rumors and innuendo of people coming back from the IL, but until they do, you don't know what they are or what they'll look like. And then you've got Bubba, who's killing it down there. Barco's killing it down there. But you don't know what that's going to look like at the major league level until you see it. That's all I'm going to say. The likelihood that Bubba is just like Paul Skeens is pretty slim. He can get there, but for him to come up here and start like that, you're talking about a phenomenon, and you're talking about a league-wide story that the Pirates are killing development of pitching. not just being okay at it. Silly idea number 3. Call up all their top prospects right now. Termarr, Johnson, Griffin, cut everybody else like Pham and Frazier and all that. I mean, you guys, we just watched a team do this. The Angels have been doing this for a few years. They call their top prospects up almost right away. They're starting first baseman. I think he was starting in the league before a year was up. So yeah, they're real quick on the trigger. Joe Adell's been in the league forever, and arguably he should be probably like on his second year. I think he's on his 4th or 5th, and it's taken him forever to get going because you still got to do the learning. You can skip all the way to 12th grade, but you're going to have to take all the classes, even if you got to do it like Billy Madison did. Baseball don't let you cheat, not too often. You get a Bryce Harper, or a Junior, or a Paul Skeens every once in a while, but you're not going to get them all the time. So I would not do that. Griffin's got some lessons to learn, I think. He'll move pretty quickly. Termarr is just really, for the first time, kind of being himself in the minors. He was really, really kind of trying to get home run happy, I think, in the last couple of years, and it hasn't worked out great for him. He's back to his contact a little bit more. Still hitting for some power, but there seems to be a little bit more of an even balance there. So he's kind of catching fire at Altoona, and I could see him moving up to AAA and kind of making some noise and getting into conversation towards the end of the year, especially if Nick Gonzalez doesn't take off or, they ultimately decide not to try Peguero. You might see them move to like Termarr, Johnson in that case. All right, so maybe these weren't that silly, but they were fun to talk about anyway, and I really loved them. Now we got the Cubs. But we're going to talk about that a lot tomorrow on Locked On Pirates. I don't want to waste a lot of today's show with that since we're not going to have to deal with them until tomorrow. Might as well lay your head down comfortably for one more night, right? Because that's one of the hottest offenses in the league. Thank you for making Locked On Pirates your first listen today. For your second listen, check out the all-new Locked On MLB Game Night. Every game, every night, all season long. Get local analysis on a national scale. Find MLB Game Night on Locked On MLB on YouTube or wherever you listen to podcasts.